What's up, guys? It's Team MPS. I am Larry, and I am here with Alec.
Right here.
And today we're going to discuss The Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth.
We've played a little bit with these cards. I think Larry's played more than I have.
A little bit.
And we decided to pick out our favorite cards in this set to play. What's your first card?
There and Back Again. It's a red Saga card. Costs 2 red and 3 generic. And as the Saga enters, of course, at the beginning of your turn, you get a Lord counter, with the first one saying up to one target creature can't block for as long as you control this Saga, and the ring tempts you.
Okay, so how do Sagas work? Because I'm not too familiar.
Sagas work, you play them, you kind of like do what they say as it comes. So like when you first play it, it'll come with 1 Lord counter, so you pretty much do what number 1 says. It'll be your opponent's turn. It's your turn again after your untap upkeep.
You get a second
You'll get the second Lord counter. You pretty much do what it says, and then after be the third Lord counter, and then generally they kind of go away. The reason I picked it is this Lore 3, create Smaug, a legendary 6/6 red dragon creature token with flying, haste, and when this creature dies, create 14 treasure tokens.
14
treasure tokens, yes.
I think for 5, that's pretty good. Now, my first card, it's gonna cost a little bit less than that, but it's my favorite card. It is Aragorn the Uniter.
I was gonna say it had to be an Aragorn card.
Aragorn is 4 different colors. He's every color except for black, the swamp color. So as a commander, he's not too expensive. 4 mana, that's not bad. You have to have 1 of each, so
it can kind of be somewhat cloggy. You got to fix your mana pool.
Yeah, but we know in Magic the Gathering, you have many ways to get the color mana that you need, but I really love these effects. So when you cast a white spell, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. In this set alone, you have so many white spells that work with or make your white human tokens. So that's very synergistic. When you cast a blue spell, scry 2. When you cast a red spell, Aragorn deals 3 damage to just any target creature. That's not huge, but against certain creatures that your opponent just wants to keep on the board to gain advantage with, that'll just snipe them. And last but certainly not least, whenever you cast a green spell, target creature gets +4/+4 until the end of the turn.
And I'm sure, as a lot of you Magic players know, or a lot of you new ones, if you play multicolored spells, you just get each one of those whenever that spell resolves.
So in a commander deck built around Aragorn the Uniter, you're playing many just multicolor cards, and you're picking up 2 and 3 of this card's effects every single turn.
Yep. For number 4, I don't actually have this card yet, but I do plan on getting one. It is the Dark Man himself, Sauron the Dark Lord. He costs quite a bit. For a 6 mana drop, you get a 7/6 legendary avatar horror. With ward, which means because he's still new, in order to target him with the card effect, you have to do whatever the ward cost is, or else it fizzles.
So he makes your opponent's cards cost extra.
Yes. His ward says sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. So in addition to that,
sacrifice your
wow. Not only that, whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass Orcs 1. Whenever an army you control deals damage to a player, the ring tempts you.
Ooh, so that gets you to the ring mechanic.
Yes. And the last part, whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand, and if you do, draw 4 cards. So if you have 1 card up, just discard it and draw 4 cards. The only thing I don't like about it, he is a little bit expensive, and being like his mana cost being 6.
I mean, once you have enough mana for this guy, he's a menace.
Yeah, he is the Dark Lord.
So my next card is not nearly as impressive as that. It's Delighted Halfling.
Why Delighted Halfling?
All right, so this is very much a card that's just useful to play. It's cost 1 green mana, but you tap it, add 1 mana.
Yeah, 1 colorless mana.
1 colorless mana.
I thought you would have picked the other one that
you can add 1 mana of any color, and then but you have to spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell, and that spell can't be countered.
So I would think he will be good in your Aragorn the United if you play a lot of legendary stuff. If you get her out, especially early game, than
Yep.
to spend any for as long as what you're casting is legendary. It don't even matter. You don't
So
even care.
this is great for your mana ramping. Just in the early game, you just want to help build up your ramp as fast as you can. Cheap and easy to use. I feel like this is a must-have.
For my number 3, I didn't understand it until I read it, and then I kind of put into context of the game outside of Commander, because again, we mostly play Commander. Orcish Bowmasters, for a rare card, has Flash, costs 1 black and 1 generic. Flash, it's a 1/1 Orc Archer.
It's a 1/1?
Yes.
For 2 mana.
When Orcish Bowmasters enter the battlefield, and whenever an opponent draws a card, except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, it deals 1 damage to any target and amass 1. I know it doesn't sound like much. Imagine a format where you have like 2 or 3 on board.
Oh, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
That could be a problem. Okay, I could see that. Like, it's not as good as the Goliath Halfling, but you know. It's alright.
It's one of those, just like, yeah, I think it's somewhat of a, if you're running black, there's no reason not to run this in some form or fashion.
All right, my 3rd card. Here it is, Flowering of the White Tree.
You pick some random stuff.
This card's good. I don't care what anybody says. So it costs 2 white mana. Legendary enchantment. Your legendary creatures you control, they all get +2/+1 and have ward 1.
Damn.
So my understanding is that this makes my opponent's spells more expensive.
Yes, if in order to target, they have to pay 1 more mana than they otherwise would have.
So +2/+1, that's solid, because that gives it to all my legendary creatures. And then non-legendary creatures I control get +1/+1. That's all my non-legendary. So this beefs up my entire board. I think Flowering the White Tree just scales really well with the game. It's solid early game because it only costs 2, but late game, everything being beefed up, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Everything being beefed up and the ward +1 makes it slightly harder to like get rid of some of your stuff. Yeah.
Oh, and not to mention, playing this with Aragorn, it's just great. It's just great. Honestly, both the cards I've shown so far, you play these with Aragorn, they're great.
My favorite, the Lord of the Rings character. That is Gandalf the White. So for 2 white, 3 generic, you get a legendary creature, avatar, wizard with Flash. Enters at instant speed. You may cast legendary spells and artifacts as though they had Flash. So it gives...
Oh, it increases the speed. Okay, that's
So
cool.
everything in your hand, if it's legendary, you can just... If you have the mana, you can play it at instant speed.
Essentially, you can sling spells.
Yeah.
I like that.
If a legendary permanent or an artifact enters or leaving the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers a 2nd time.
You can sling spells and double cast.
Yes, it stacks. You can either run it as a commander in an all-white strategy or throw it in anything that's playing white. I don't see any reason why you wouldn't if you're playing legendary stuff.
Right. So this is my 4th. This one, this wasn't on my list until we played with those starter decks earlier. And I now have a deep love for this card.
Is it
It's Rosie Cotton of South Lane. So when Rosie enters the battlefield, you create a food token. Very simple. You know. Whenever you create a token, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control other than Rosie. This is a white card. It costs 3 mana in total. It's 1/1, which is not great.
I was gonna say that's a steep mana cost for a 1/1, but I think like with her, you're playing the long game with.
You're playing lots of food tokens. You're amassing food much in the same way that the other deck amassed orcs. And Rosie will trigger every time you create a token to keep beefing up your creatures. Essentially, Rosie is feeding them and making them stronger. What's your next card? What's your final card?
Final card. My last card. My number 1 card.
Though I think we share this one.
Do we? The One
Ring. Yeah.
This card, if a lot of you have been keeping up with this, I think a lot of people are playing this card just in anything. It's 4 mana for legendary artifact. Indestructible. Can't be destroyed.
Love it.
When the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each bird encounter on the One Ring. Okay.
I mean, that is not great.
So, and his other fact, Tap it, put a burden counter on the one ring, then draw a card for each burden counter on the one ring.
Oh, that's worth it. I want as much burden as I can get.
So if you activate it on you want as much burden.
Yes.
The ring burdens you.
Mm-hmm. So I can draw.
So if you activate it on your turn, by the time your next turn comes around, well, on that turn, you can immediately tap it and draw a card.
This card is protection.
The next turn, you can add a burden counter, tap it, you draw 2 cards, and then it just keeps going and going. I can see no other reason. If you have this, you're probably running it in anything, even if it's not the Lord of the Rings related.
So these are our 5. Go ahead and bring yours out, or the 4 that you have.
Yeah.
These are our 5 favorite cards to play in
The Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. What are some of your favorites?
And if you can find better ways to use the cards that we've talked about here, go ahead and throw it in the comments. I want to read all of them.
All of them. And I think that's it for today's video. I've been Larry.
And I'm Alec. Pass turn.